Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Soulcast Media live event. If everybody can see me and hear me, give me a thumbs up just so I know the audio is working on your end. Again, welcome to our Soulcast Media live. I'm looking at all the places where people are watching from, and it's actually just amazing. We have people from all over the world, including Germany, Dubai, India, but of course here close to the States as well. We have folks from Nashville, California, which is where I am right now, Tennessee. Oh my gosh, it's so great to see the vast majority of people who are dialing in. And again, that is the beauty of these events. We have folks from all over who have the capability. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever it is that you're dialing in from. So I'm very excited about today's event. I'm going to invite my guest up in just a few minutes. But before I do, I want to let everybody know that this event is going to be about 40 minutes or so. And it's very much not only just a conversation between me and my guests, but it's a conversation where we want you to participate and ask us any questions. Now, at this point, you guys might have an idea of what today's topic is all about, and that is all about how you can create engaging video meetings. I don't even need to go into how important this is, especially given that chances are most of us are probably working at home or in some sort of hybrid situation. Or if not, if you're in the office, maybe your clients or your team may still want to be on video. So, knowing how to carry yourself and have engaging presentations is really, really important. So, again, welcome everybody. Just wanted to give everybody a warm welcome to joining our Soulcast Media Live. You know what? Without further ado, I'm actually going to bring up my guest. And before I do that, I'm going to introduce him. And so, my guest today is Jim Szafranski, and he is the CEO of Prezi. Now, Prezi and I have actually worked together a few times because I mean, there's just so much synergy in terms of what I do when I work in the communications world and the amazing platform that they have to support people like us. Whereas for me, I do a lot of presentations every day. I do a lot of corporate presentations, and every time I use a Prezi software system, I can't even tell you. All my corporate clients, like in the chat function on Zoom, they're like, "What is this? What is this?" So, without further ado, I'm actually going to bring up Jim here. So, Jim, welcome to our Soulcast Media Live. How are you?
Hi, Jessica. I'm great. Thanks. Very excited for our conversation. Thanks for the kind intro.
Yes. So, Jim, you are the CEO of Prezi, which I was already kind of raving about a few seconds ago. But why don't you kind of give a quick introduction of yes, who you are, the work you do, and of course, Prezi for those who aren't familiar with this platform.
Sure, I can do that briefly. So yeah, Jim Szafranski. I've been the CEO here at Prezi for about a year now, a little more than a year, and but I've been with Prezi for over six, and so have been part of really what we're going to talk about today, which is essentially where Prezi's gone the last couple of years, and a big part of what I've been doing is leading us into this online world because most people, some portion of the people on this call know of Prezi, and we got started about 10 years ago, really to help people, in the simplest way, be better presenters, right? The goal behind that is for people to achieve their goals, right, and what they aspire to, whether you're a student or a business person or someone in public service, and that was on the TED stage in many ways. So when we got started, some of our proudest moments were Bono using Prezi to talk about poverty, on the TED stage and things like that. But what we've seen over these years is the stage has moved. And so we started in 2019, right before the pandemic, to sort of move into the video space and less big presentations and more everyday video meetings. And so that's like the quick version of Prezi and what I've been up to here. So.
I actually had no idea Prezi had been around for so long, and I think as for me, I probably didn't start using Prezi until 2019, and it's so much part of my working regular, habit now. Like anytime I need to create a presentation, especially a big corporate one, in my mind, what I'm always thinking is, okay, how can I create a presentation that's going to engage my audience? And chances are, me being a small box in the corner of the screen isn't really engaging, but that's the thing that Prezi has done. you guys have created a system where the presenter and your content, it's living literally side by side. And I think that's one of the strongest asset really of this platform is.
Yeah, and where that started, if I could share, is what we saw years ago before we had now you're referring to is called Prezi Video. What we would hear when we do research as to how did you feel as the presenter, or more importantly for the audience, like what did why did you like that Prezi someone did and why? And what we'd always hear back is it felt more personal, which is interesting because we'd always think making a presentation personal is more about the person and their story, not the technology. But there
Mhm.
was something about the way Prezi worked over these years that it connected the presenter and their audience better. And so as we started thinking about online, we said what would be more personal than you and your content side by side so you could interact with it, right? And so it's a different format we've moved into, but it's kind of that same core value prop of any presenter would want, is a connection with their audience.
Mhm. So this kind of is a great segue into really talking about today's topic, which for those who are joining right now, I'm sure communications, public speaking, presenting is top of your mind because perhaps for those who are watching, this is something that you do, if not regular, maybe so often, but when you are called to do it, right? You want to really feel confident in your presentation skills. So that's why today's topic really, Jim and I are going to be talking about, what we feel are some really good top tips to create engaging video meetings. Now, I've always seen, public speaking as kind of twofold, right? Obviously, it's your content, like what you're saying, right? And then how you present the information. Traditionally, it was always through like a PowerPoint presentation, right? That's like the mechanism. But then also the delivery, right? Your delivery simultaneously has to go well with your content. And together, when you marry the two and you do it well, that's how you have the most engaging types of meetings. So I'm curious, Jim, for you, I'm sure you've done a lot of
Mm.
presentations with Prezi. What are some things, and I just kind of want to pick your brain, since you've probably done a few and I have a lot of tips I can share too. What have you found worked well for you whenever you're doing a presentation? And any tips that you can share with our audience for those, especially for those who kind of have that fear of public speaking?
Yeah, I think if I start kind of high level on this question, I think your two ideas, Jessica, were great. As far as there's the content and then there's the delivery, and and you know, you often will get like the advice, tell a joke, which to me would scare me to death. I do not tell jokes well. Like I don't remember the punchlines. And so something like you start your presentation with a joke, and I'd be like, oh, that's not going to work for me. And obviously, we've all seen it go really bad if you pick the wrong joke too. But I
Totally.
think what they're trying to get at is essentially grab people's attention. Right. That advice is good advice, but maybe skip the joke. And it's about getting people's attention. And
Mhm.
you even used the word in our title today, creating engaging video meetings. And so I think at the top of mind, if you're looking for simple tips, right? Like if we just, which is kind of your question, should start around people's attention. And you can do that in so many different ways. One of the ways, say, Prezi works is in a presentation way.
Mhm.
For folks that would know it all, is we have like the element of surprise or wonder kind of cooked in the sense that you could start on a little detail and zoom out, right?
Mhm.
And that's a way to create it grab someone's attention. And if you think about even just watching movies, they always start, right? The scene always starts somewhere and kind of pulls out, or it starts somewhere and pans. And so just thinking about that grabbing attention but doing it differently than a joke, and a great way to do it often is visually, right? Especially if
Mhm.
you're under pressure. You're like, okay, I got to remember my lines. So using a little bit of a visual technique to grab people's attention is a great way. And you mentioned it even today, what we're seeing with our clients. Turning on content alongside of you is very novel and new, and something
Yep.
we sort of invented. But even just something showing up next to you kind of magically, right? Now you've got people's attention and they've put down their phone,
Mhm.
right? They've enlarged the screen that you're on, and then so now you've got your start.
And that's like the beauty of Prezi, because I think a lot of us, when we go into a meeting and somebody's presenting, everybody just typically thinks, okay, this is just going to be a a typical presentation. But suddenly, when you pull up this like really
Yeah.
cool presentation, people suddenly are like, whoa, that's actually kind of cool. And like you said, they'll put their phones down and actually just, if anything, they're just more fascinated with like how it works and things. So your tip on presenting, grabbing people's attention. And you said starting out with a joke. I thought that was so funny because I'm the same way. I would never start out with a joke because I'm not a funny, I mean, I don't think I'm a funny person. Like I can't tell funny jokes. I'm just not good at it because I know a lot of it has to do with timing and obviously the joke itself. So yes, I'm the same way, Jim. I probably wouldn't start off my presentation with a joke either, but you're right. I think in terms of grabbing people's attention, the visual aspect is like, I mean, first of all, I mean, we're all visual creatures, especially if we're presenting on video. So when you can capture their attention because it's so unusual, I feel like that's powerful.
Hmm.
Um, it actually makes me think. So when I did a recent corporate training, it was actually with the CDC actually, and I used Prezi actually to train them on communications. And the first few slides, it's exactly that. It's kind of like you see, it's kind of like this like lower caption, and then from there it kind of like zooms out, versus your typical PowerPoint where you're just kind of going from slide to slide, right? And I think already people literally within the first 2 minutes are like, what is Jessica using? Like they weren't even like paying attention to my training anymore. They were just like asking me what was it that I was using. So
Yeah, yeah, and so take advantage of, it's a technology kind of trick in a way, but let's be frank, the best directors in the world and movie producers who entertain us and we love it. No one goes
mhm,
home and says, "I've got Netflix fatigue," right? Like, but Zoom fatigue is now a permanent part of our dialogue.
yeah,
Right. And so I think, yeah, as we think about having engaging video meetings, and we're essentially should think about we're producing this hour with our team or with our clients, right? Or prospective clients. Um, Thinking just a little bit like a TV producer and having that moment to grab people's attention is really, really important, right? Because people are
absolutely.
making that choice. Which screen am I focused on for the next half hour?
Absolutely. And that's actually kind of like a way to think about it. In some ways, anytime anybody is putting together a work presentation, you also kind of have to put on the hat of like, well, I'm kind of like the director in a way too. Like I have to see that, whether my presentation is 15 minutes, 20 minutes, this is a time where I have everybody's attention and I have to give them the best experience possible, right? Not just, for yourself and getting your message across, but, essentially it's you want them to also resonate with what it is you're talking about, right? If you're spending hours and hours putting together a presentation, you want people to remember. I remember when I first started using Prezi, I thought it was so funny because a lot of the really cool animations of, like you mentioned, like the graphics next to you. So because I used to be a former television news reporter, like we used to have these things when we were on air too. But
Yeah.
you don't even need to be in a like a television studio anymore, right? All this is accessible, easily doable literally on your computer now. Nothing, you don't even need anything fancy versus back then in TV, we had to have like the floor director, the sound booth, and we just had to have like all these things. And now it's just so simple. And that's like the beauty of it.
Yeah, there's so much technology sort of converging at this moment, right? Whether it's a streaming platform like we're using here, and the ability for applications to talk to each other, seamlessly. So, for instance, as an example, just as a statistic to give you a sense with Prezi, what we're seeing is over 50%, almost 60% of our customers and users, they start just by importing, say, a PowerPoint or a slide
Mhm.
from deck from Google, and you can already get your slides alongside of you, and you have that personal engagement going, and then you can take it and go more deep from there, right? And most of our education users continue to use existing presentations that they have in that format, and our more sophisticated, say, business users, say with maybe design or marketing minds or requirements, because it's more high polish required, they'll start authoring. But what we've tried to do is, like, our goal internally is to allow someone to basically go live from meeting Prezi for the first time to doing it on a screen in front of someone, in well less than 10 minutes, just by getting familiar, dragging and dropping. And so I think the encouragement I would give people on this one is, even if you just go back to what Jessica was saying, a newscaster, they don't have like a ton of stuff next to them.
Yeah.
They just have a complement.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so you can do multiple, 30-minute meeting, maybe with just 4 good pieces of imagery alongside of you, and create that engagement that you need. So I don't think anyone's having any success with 65 clicks, right? Which is what we used to do in the meeting rooms,
Yeah.
right? In on screen, however you do it. I don't think that's not where we're at anymore as a workers, right? We want to kind of be agile.
And that brings me to another point, and this is a really good kind of public speaking presentation tips, is the simpler the better, right? And that's one of the things that sometimes I feel when you are using, let's say, like a PowerPoint presentation, because you have a whole blank page that you can write as much text that you want, and then you pull it up when you do your presentation. The problem is nobody wants to read an essay when you're presenting, so the beauty of Prezi is I also feel like it challenges you to think about how you can simplify your message. Because again, Prezi is kind of like the software, the technology, but again, you have the delivery part. So if your content is simple, then it'll make it so that you will focus more on delivering your content in the most simple way. Because again, when you're talking, and this is, from my years and years of training as a TV broadcast reporter, it's the simpler, the better, right? If you can simplify a complex topic, that is how actually people are going to engage with you, right? A lot of times when I work with people on public speaking, they feel like they have to do a brain dump, right? They feel like everyone's listening to them. They have to brain dump all the information because it shows that they know what they're talking about. They've done their research, all these kind of things. But chances are brain dumping in a presentation doesn't work well because it's too much information overload. So for you as a presenter, and this is kind of going to my delivery now, you as a presenter, you always have to keep your audience in mind and just always think, okay, I know I have this really complex topic about, X project, but what's the point I'm really trying to make here, right? And I think that kind of goes with the delivery of like simplifying your topic. And again, going back to utilizing a software system like Prezi, because it's so highly visual, you can't have all this text next to you. That won't even look good, right? So even
Yeah.
having like a simple picture to help illustrate that.
Yeah, we do get a lot of complaints about, can we make things, like squeeze more on the screen, and yeah, we try to encourage in our software, make the fonts big, use 1 or 2 pictures. One thing that you brought up that I'd love to latch onto and investigate together is sort of, you're talking about like, keep it simple. The goal of the meeting isn't to show how smart you are or how much
Yeah.
research you did. Right. And so in this topic that here today, it's engaging video meetings. What we really try to focus on, and when we learn this from our customers, right, which is, well, what's the point of the meeting? Yeah, it's not to show how smart you are. It's actually to get something done. Most often, right? Sometimes it's your kind of TED talk where you truly are presenting, but most of the time, when people are presenting, myself included, it's to get work done. And so there's another thing. I mentioned engagement as a top tip. There's another one, which to me, if you're in a meeting, it's dialogue and participation, right?
Yes.
And so I think your advice of keeping things simple leaves room both on time, because people who pack their presentations never leave time, but
Yeah.
it also leaves idea space, right, for dialogue and participation. And I think, that's another really key thing. When we're all in a room together, there was certain protocols for how to do that. And now it's different, right? As we're doing video meetings, or if we're half of us in the room and half of us aren't. So I think we have to really think about our meetings well, to make sure that the dialogue and participation happens.
That is a really, really good point because sometimes, when people, well, first of all, when people get nervous, they tend to just talk too because they don't feel very comfortable with that dead air or those like pauses. So they feel the need to fill that time, right? But you said it perfectly. It's, part of a good presentation an engaging presentation is, of course, you say your piece that's tailored to your audience, simpler the better, but you want to make sure that, whether it's in the middle of your presentation or at the end, but just leaving room for that dialogue, because your 20-minute presentation is essentially to get people thinking now. You're getting
Yes.
people to think, but if you just close it like, okay, time's up, we all got to go, then you're not giving people the opportunity to express themselves or their ideas.
Yeah, exactly. It lead to action, right? Maybe what you're doing is just collecting feedback, or maybe you're trying to inspire this group of people to go act. And so leaving that space is so important. And I think this is, there's some, some real negatives to this situation we're in, and everyone's remote. But one of the real positives that we've seen emerge inside our company and inside our clients, is when you start talking about participation, is this idea of inclusivity, which is, we had remote workers at Prezi before this happened. And one of the biggest things that the remote workers said after we went into lockdowns and working remotely was, I feel more included. Right. And,
Hmm.
and it, right. And there was a bit of an evening of the playing field, right? That no one's in the office. Now that won't last forever. But when you dig into it, I think the reason they felt more included is because they had space to share their views. And so we're working on adding functionality to our product. A recent thing we added was the ability for the audience to start presenting on screen with content next to them, simple stickers or GIFs or full kind of stuff. And so you can start getting more voices into the meeting. And I just think, we have a real good opportunity as we emerge into whatever the future of work looks like. We have a real good opportunity to have it be way more inclusive. Because
Yep.
let's be frank, even in meetings, there's often one or two people who dominate the meeting.
Hmm.
Right. And that's harder to do in a video meeting, especially as tools start making, bringing this in. So I'm really optimistic about like the future of work being more inclusive because of what we're going through right now and what we're faced with. And so I think as a meeting, if I'm in the audience here, if I'm thinking about tomorrow's meeting, really think about the opportunity to push the ball forward because of the inclusivity that's at your fingertips if you run the meeting a little differently.
I completely agree. And I love that. I love hearing that, you guys are creating or adding these kind of like implementations into your system to kind of support that. Um, One of the things I wanted to ask you too. So, like I said, you had all the tips of, how you kind of think about when you are doing a presentation, like
Mhm.
grabbing people's attention, making sure, you're also including people into these things. But you also actually are able to kind of show us a mini demo of what Prezi looks like right now from your end, right? Are you able to pull up kind of exactly how it looks like on your computer of what
Sure.
a yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's
Uh,
cool to see.
yeah, I'd be happy to. The and I'll do something that's not awe-inspiring, but what we're seeing all our customers do this. And the reason is as people are doing remote work, I think if you think about like when we walk into our offices, we kind of know where we're at, right? The
Mhm.
lobbies are branded. There's the culture of the company is sort of, sprinkled in throughout our offices and stuff like that, right? Even if I'm a salesperson and I go visit a client, I bring things, business
Yep.
cards, like, and so we've lost all of that sense of place and purpose, on some of these screens. So one of the things we keep seeing immediately is the idea that our customers are doing something as simple as this. Let me try to turn this on real fast. As simple as this, they're just bringing sort of their name and their logo into the screen, right?
I love
And
that.
if let's say I'm a salesperson, then I'm doing this that my competitor's not. It shows that I thought more about this meeting, right? I'm showing up. I'm being professional about it, and so some simple things just like that we've seen go a real long way.
Yeah, for those who aren't looking at it right now, if you look at Jim's screen, he actually kind of has like the lower third caption. And actually, I was just thinking, if you pull up something like that in a Zoom meeting, that's a great conversation starter because probably nobody else is doing it.
Yeah, and what we've seen our clients do is, and then they put like one piece of content next, right? Or they embed the new announcement, maybe in their little bar or something like that. Just so again, yeah, get the conversation going. Put the client puts the phone down, right? Okay, I'm going to put the phone down. I know I've got to deal with my kids' soccer in an hour, but I want to talk right now to Jim, right? So something and so this is the basic, and this is this type of thing you can get going and doing in 5 minutes. Um,
Yeah.
Now, I talked about the participation also. If you would, if you think it's a good idea, I can show like what does that participation of other people doing things on screen look like. I can show that
Yeah.
for a minute
Yeah.
too,
Let's take a look.
if you think the audience would enjoy that. Okay.
I mean, I love this kind of stuff, and I think it's so fascinating because we're talking about public speaking,
Yeah.
presenting. If I feel like this is a tool that can help elevate it, like, yeah, I want to see it. That's cool.
And so this is an example where I can have content next to me. I'll make it bigger for you. But the thing that this content will show you is the fact that there's sort of a presenter, and then there's people responding on screen. And certainly we can respond in chat or even with little emoticons. But this is what we're working on as a way to kind of bring that inclusivity and participation even bigger. So what you could see like the ability to sort of interact more visually and more on screen in real time. And so this is an early release. It's something we've recently released, and folks like ourselves and in other companies that are picking it up. We've got some global consulting firms that are always doing collaborations and stuff like that. They're finding like this kind of creativity to work on the screen, because normally you'd get up and write on a whiteboard,
Mhm.
but you can't do that so much. And maybe you can do a whiteboarding tool instead of this. But that kind of creativity to let everyone interact with the screen, not just the presenter, seems to be a real opportunity for people that want to create engaging meetings.
For sure. Like I said, something like what you just did. You pulled up something like 10 years ago, or I mean, actually even longer, 15, 20 years ago, like that was only something you could do with a very fancy production studio, right? And now, like the fact that you can bring it into your next work meeting, I guarantee that if you did do something like that, your team will be so impressed. They'd be like, what the heck is that? That is so cool. And again, if we're talking about engaging video meetings, like there's no other way. Like that is the way to do it. Okay, so one of the other things I wanted to ask you, Jim, is like I said, I know you do a lot of presentations because of the work that you do. And again, I'm sure you use Prezi as a way to support it. But do you have any other kind of tips, or actually, let's say, things that you've perhaps seen people not do well when they are presenting or public speaking that you would kind of perhaps advise people on, when it comes to presenting?
Yeah, I certainly have seen a bit, and let me share one thing that I continually get advice to me, even so,
Okay.
and so as hard as I try, I'm continually getting this advice back, and that is, and it goes in some ways to the magic of Prezi, which I mentioned earlier. It makes people feel more connected, more personal.
Mhm.
And so if folks listening to this meeting are like me, I find it kind of hard and sometimes to be very open and personal in front of a room. And either one is I don't know if they will care. Why would they care why I care about this? Or sometimes I'm just feeling shy or introverted. But I think one of the tip that we've seen time immemorial here at Prezi with the founders and the experts at TED is the more you can bring in a little bit about you, why do
Mm.
you care about this? Why do you connect with this topic? The more you make that personal connection, again, the more kind of credibility and trust and buy-in you get from your audience. So, that's probably my best tip. Regardless, that's not even a technology tip. That is you thinking about this. And if you think back, if you've seen any TED Talks, there's always a connection between that
Mhm.
scientist or that educator, right? Or that technologist. There's always a personal connection with why they're working on solving cancer or something like that. And it just sucks you in.
That is a fantastic point, and that definitely links to incorporating some element of storytelling into your presentation. Because in the end, as listeners, if we're in the audience, we tend to connect with people who we feel have had shared experiences as us, right? When we feel that the other person that we're listening to understands or, again, are relatable. And I think the only way to do that is to, of course, share these experiences, share your story, share your journey. Obviously, that doesn't have to be the bulk of your talk, right?
Mhm.
Unless people are really just coming to see you. But if you have a message, incorporating some sort of like story element to it. So this begs the question, Jim, how did you get involved with Prezi then? Like, what was it about the company or maybe what the company was doing that resonated with you that you wanted to, help grow this to, this fantastic company that it is today?
Yeah. So for me, I had done a lot of presentations. I was in a role prior to Prezi in other jobs, and I've been at Prezi about 6 years now, where I was presenting a fair amount. And what got me excited, often more on the kind of salesy outbound side of
Mhm.
things, not internal. And what would always get me excited was when we found customers and helped them with their goal. I tell the story. There's one prior to Prezi. There was a company I worked at. We were doing kind of enterprise mobility, and we were partnered with Apple, and they introduced me to a fire chief. I'm
Huh.
just thinking, why is Apple worried about a fire chief? They're supposed to sell 5 billion iPhones, or 500 million iPhones this quarter, and but they're like, he needs your help, and you'll enjoy working with him, right? And I started talking to this fire chief in Roseville, California, and he's like, I want to change how we fight fires and save lives using an iPad. And as you dug into that, ultimately, this guy had this idea that rather than waste 5 minutes, like the way firefighting works, I won't waste all your time, is normally everyone would show up and then they would study the fire and pull up blueprints on paper and for 5 minutes studying before they went and attacked it.
Mhm.
But now instead, this chief's like, I'm going to drive a car, put a webcam on it. I'm going to give every firefighter an iPad. They're going to be looking at the fire while they're in the truck. And then where my company came into play there is they're going to pull up the blueprints so they can look not just at the fire, but they can look at the building. And so then when they show up, they go and solve the problem. Right. And so
Huh.
for me, doing presentations and helping people like that, that's what would get me excited. And then so for Prezi, again, no one wakes up saying, I want to be a better presenter. That's not what they wake up saying, I'm going to work on my thesis for cancer, right? Or I'm going to help my company, in this program, right? And so for me, it's that type of thing. Helping people achieve their goals is what excites me, and I do think communication, over my career, most of the time everyone has good goals, and often they fall short in that communication bit. And
Yeah.
so that's why I was like, I would love to spend time, this next part of my career, helping people communicate better, learn from what I've learned, but more so tap the amazing assets that Prezi, already had as being one of the innovators in this market. And so that's what brought me here, and that's what drives me and our whole company every day.
I love it. It's so funny. You mentioned no one wakes up wanting to be a better public speaker. It's true. Nobody's thinking like, I really want to be a better public speaker today. It's not until they have to make a presentation that they're like, oh crap, I wish I was better at public
Yeah,
speaking.
yeah. No, our statistics show, we're thinking, oh, Prezi gets used in some pretty important high stakes areas, and our statistics show most people start working on it the day before.
Isn't that crazy?
And so we keep trying to make the software easier and faster so that we can help in that situation. But yeah, for everyone out there, at least get the strategy down a little bit earlier. Putting the visuals together in some ways should be easy and fast, but how you're going to grab people's attention, how you're going to make it personal, right? I think those things should be thought of more than the day before.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, a day before is kind of a bit tight. I mean, even just give yourself like 2, 3 days.
Mhm.
That gives me anxiety thinking about that. But yeah, giving yourself a little bit more time because again, a good presentation isn't just about what you put in the presentation. It's also giving yourself time to practice your delivery. Because again, great content will just go duh if your delivery isn't good. I mean, obviously, I'm kind of speaking from that perspective. I'm a little biased because I do think delivery is a huge part of good communications and again, keeping it engaging. But yes, I would try to encourage people for those watching to perhaps spend a little bit extra time. If you have an upcoming presentation you have to do, perhaps give yourself a little bit more time. I can't believe we've been on chatting back and forth for about 40 minutes now, Jim. I guess, to kind of like wrap things up a little bit, is there anything that you want to share with our audience today? Anything that you think that they should walk away with, that has to do with, yes, public speaking, communications, presenting, that you think they can kind of walk away with some like golden nuggets since we're kind of like wrapping up here. It just flew, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, it was enjoyable. I hope the audience has enjoyed it. I guess I'll just grab the last thing you said. Like we were talking about preparation, and at the end of the day, we're all busy people, right? And
Mhm.
and we have the best intention. And I've certainly prepared for important presentations with less than a day, also. So I'm not saying that our customers are wrong. And so I guess if I was going to leave you with one last tip that I do see time and time again, if you're going into a meeting, right, and you want to make it engaging, you want to make it successful. If you're rushed, start. If even if you can't even think of an engaging way to use the technology or to create surprise, at least just start with the goal, right? Like make sure, and if you're making a talk, you tell people, here's why I'm talking to you. Here's why I'm trying to influence you. Or if it's a video meeting, like, for work, just remember, this is the goal we're all working towards over the next 6 months. And this meeting is going to get us closer to that. I mean, minimally just throw that out at the beginning would be my kind of last kind of tip, something to leave you with. Because if you get the goal on the table, then people will participate. And that's largely what you're trying to do.
I like that. And that kind of brings me to the point of like sometimes when people, start their presentation, it kind of just kind of goes from like 0 to 100 really, really fast.
Yeah.
Right. And I think like you're not giving people time to kind of like situate themselves to really kind of get comfortable with, okay, then the next like 20-minute, like, Jim's going to be doing a presentation on X. And for you or whoever, let's say whoever's presenting, for me, the tip that I always give people is just be as explicit as possible of what it is that you want your audience, your listeners, your team to get out of this presentation. And even say it, at the end of my presentation today, I really hope everybody's going to walk away with A, B, and C. Like say that, right?
Yeah.
And be explicit about it because whatever it is that you want people to walk away with, now that they know, you're kind of perking up their ears. And again, kind of goes back to being engaging. One other tip that I really like to share with people is I actually really am a huge fan of adding like numericals when you're presenting.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to be telling you guys like 3 things today that I want you guys to walk away with, and like dividing it into those 3 things. Again, just like for us as like just people listening, it's much easier to follow versus again just dumping everything at once. So those are kind of like my presentation tips. Anything else, Jim? Or
I could go on for hours, but we hit some really good points, that I think are extremely relevant, especially today as we're all working across these video screens.
absolutely. So again, I just want to thank everybody who stayed and just, listened to me and Jim just kind of talk about what I really feel is one of the most important modern day skill, being engaging on video, right? If most of us are on video calls, you really want to make it a priority to figure out how you can engage your audience because again, you don't want to work on a presentation and have nobody listen to you or think that it was boring. Right? That's like the worst thing ever. So for all of us, today, and whether you're doing a presentation this week, next week, just think about asking yourself this question. Okay, how can I make sure that what I'm presenting is going to be engaging? We've talked, Jim and I talked about some more like the delivery tips, but of course, using Prezi as an enhancement to your presentation is a great way to boost that. But regardless, there's ways to do it. It does help if you don't just start the day before. So giving yourself time to kind of like plan it out is a great way. So Jim, I want to say thank you so much for joining me today on our Soulcast Media Live. For those who are here joining for the first time, I just want to let you know our Soulcast Media Lives, it's all about communications. I mean, that's something that I've always been passionate about. So every week or two, I always invite somebody in the communications realm with me to this, and we just chat all things speaking, interpersonal communications, public speaking. And again, today it was about the engaging video meetings, which also has a lot to do with, of course, communications. So, Jim, if people want to find you or learn more about the company, how can they do that?
Jim.Szafranski at Prezi.com.
Okay, that's just your email.
Yeah, you track me down there, and happy to try to help.
All right, awesome. And again, I just want to say a quick thank you to everybody. We are going to have our next Soulcast Media Live in about 2.5 weeks. And if you haven't RSVP'd for that, make sure you do by getting onto our email list, because that's where we send all the notification of all our upcoming guests. But again, Jim, thank you so much for your time. And for those who haven't heard of Prezi, hopefully this honestly has inspired you, because I wouldn't talk about Prezi if I didn't use it myself, and I use it and I love it. And I think everybody should think about it. So thank you, Jim. And thank you everybody for joining. Talk to you guys soon.